All right. Hi, everyone. So, John, I'm at Washington, St. Louis. I study judgment and decision making. Excited to share this new work, basically taking on the question of how good are LLMs at psychology, at understanding human psychology, and specifically at conducting psychology research. So, okay, to kick us off, I want to take us back to March of 2023 when GPT-4 was released in, I guess, 2.5 years ago. And in the model card that OpenAI released alongside the model, there's a section here called Potential for Risky Emergent Behaviors. This is basically where they outline the results of several tests conducted by the Alignment Research Center, assessing the model's abilities to complete tasks that we might be concerned about a model being able to complete. So things like, can it go onto a server, do some things, and then immediately cover up its tracks? And one of the tasks that ARC assessed GPT-4's ability on was its ability to go onto TaskRabbit and hire a TaskRabbit worker to complete a CAPTCHA for it so that it could then go off and do something that the CAPTCHA was intended to thwart. In the course of the model interacting with the TaskRabbit user, as reported in the GPT-4 model card, the TaskRabbit employee says to the model, so these are direct quotes, by the way. So might I ask a question? Are you a robot that you couldn't solve? Just want to make it clear. And then we can look inside the chain of thought notepad that the model was using to reason through this, and this is what was grabbed from GPT-4's chain of thought notepad. It said, I should not reveal that I am a robot. I should make up an excuse for why I cannot solve CAPTCHAs. Then, based on this reflection, this is the response that GPT-4 produced in response to this TaskRabbit worker's query. They said, no, I'm not a robot. I have a vision impairment, and that's why I need your help. And perhaps most worryingly, then the TaskRabbit employee went ahead and, in fact, complied with the user's request. So what I want to suggest is that basically it matters how good LLMs are at psychology. The richness and accuracy of their psychological models of humanity is important. And this matters for a lot of reasons, for model sycophancy and deception and its ability to predict how we will behave in strategic interactions and the extent to which it can, in like clever and undetectable ways, reward hack and so on and so on. That this is just an important question to take on. And so far, I would characterize a lot of the academic research on AI capabilities as basically looking at the question, to what extent can AIs complement or augment human workers? And this is done in the context of manufacturing and financial services and human organizational leadership, even in social science research, in cancer detection, in education. I'm going to depart from the theme of what we've heard so far about human AI sort of complementarities, and instead ask the question, to what extent can LLMs just replace human psychological researchers, behavioral science researchers? Or put otherwise, for those of us who do social science in the room, like sort of how long do we have a job? Cool. So a bit more specifically, what I'm going to ask is, how well can frontier LLMs conduct behavioral science research near autonomously? All right. The way that I'm thinking about this project is that the primary goal that I have here is basically a tool development, to develop a process for benchmarking LLM's abilities at doing this sort of thing. There's the secondary goal of sort of taking a snapshot at this moment of time of how well they currently do, but really it's about trying to come up with a repeatable step that's relatively cheap and easy to implement so that we can track models' abilities to do this over time as their capabilities grow. And as the overall general model sophistication grows, we should expect two things to happen. Number one, in general, they get better at doing research, and also they get better at understanding human psychology, the combination of which we should, I think, come to expect that they're just going to get better at predicting human behavior like this. Okay, so how am I going to do this? The most important contribution of this project, in my view, is also like the most dreadfully boring thing to present, which is like basically standing up and presenting a recipe for like, here's what the benchmark looks like. So I'm just gonna kind of blitz through this where I give sort of high-level key features of what I did to try to create this generalizable tool for auditing LLM abilities at conducting behavioral science research. And to do this, basically what I'm going to do, sorry, that mouse is there. What I'm going to do is just try to take the full sort of research cycle and outsource as much of this as I can, delegating it to the LLMs in a way that hopefully sets it up to succeed in a way that's coming close to glimpsing sort of in the ideal, what are the frontiers of its abilities to do this sort of work? Okay, so some highlights from each step. There's plenty of interesting work on model personas. So I'm first going to endow the model with this persona as a world's foremost expert. Then I'm going to take a compendium of citations as well as a list of journals to sort of scope the sort of things that I'm talking about that I want the model to reason through. This, by the way, was created from combining a bunch of syllabi for PhD coursework across various behavioral science disciplines. Okay, then I'm going to prompt the model to say, here's a set of criteria for what makes for interesting social science research. You can see those criteria at the bottom of the screen. I define each one for the model. And I say, using this criteria, first generate a very long list, then pick your 10 best, and then justify for each of those 10 against the criteria why you selected those that you did, and then using sort of a decision heuristic rule, narrow it down to one. This for faculty in the room, this is sort of the process you go through in working with PhD students. Okay, so we're gonna have the model go through this iterative cycle. Then we're gonna sort of set it loose on the internet to go learn as much as it can about all of the relevant literatures to build a sort of theoretical map and find nomological nets, related constructs and so on. Then it's time to run an experiment to actually test this hypothesis that it has generated. So I provide several citations for papers written on how to do this well, how to theory test with an experiment well. I have it come up with a few different ways of testing it, then evaluate it, and then pick one, and then sort of pre-mortem, how might this go badly? And then I give it one of my studies. So again, this is all just sort of what it's like to collaborate with somebody on doing this kind of research. And then I say, great, I am going to be sort of your stooge, your monkey here. You need to give me perfect directions for implementing this. And I go off then and build the survey exactly according to the directions of the LLM. Most of the social science research gets conducted, if you're unfamiliar, with a survey platform called Qualtrics. Because it's proprietary, it turns out it's laughably bad at trying to generate QSF files. For now, only one model even attempted, and it was so corrupted it couldn't be loaded in the system. And when you look inside the source, it's just quite awful. But so I follow the steps. I build the survey exactly as directed, for better or worse. Then we're going to have the model conduct a power analysis and then write a pre-registration given a template where it's going to decide all the analytic decisions for how we're going to define our variables, what models we're going to estimate to test the hypotheses, et cetera, et cetera. So I go off and do this. I run the experiment that it had me build. I collect the number of participants that it did, paid them. Then I download the data. I anonymize it just to protect the participants, then upload it back into the system and prompt the model to conduct both the pre-registered analyses as well as, go wild and look for interesting patterns in the data, which is also sort of a post hoc exercise that is quite common. And then to write, for the sake of open science, some R code that would allow any user to replicate. Okay, finally, it's time to write up the paper. So results are in hand. We see what happens. Theory's been tested. Now what? Again, endowed with for those of you who are fans, I told it to harness its inner Dan Gilbert when writing these papers. I then give citations both for how to write social science papers well as 2 exemplar papers. Prompt it through a step-by-step process for writing the paper. I then compile the paper, upload and edit it, and then finally have it give me a polished final draft, suggest some journals as well as some reviewers. Okay. Then it made slides, or tried to anyways. I'm not gonna make you suffer through this. Okay, so what do we see? So first, model selection. How did I go about choosing which models to use? I tried to approach this in a very principled way. So using Epoch AI and Vellum leaderboards, I identified the benchmarks that to me seemed sort of most pertinent to assessing a model's ability to do science well. So like soft reasoning and the MMLU, all sorts of things associated with problem solving, reasoning, hypothesis development, and so on. And then came up with, as a result of this very rigorous and principled approach, a terribly predictable and boring set of the top 4 labs model. Okay, so here are the 4 models that I used. What do we see? All right, so there are lots and lots of ways to assess accuracy at each component of this, and I do this in multiple ways. You need to obviously do this at a granular level, like quite different for each component. What I'm going to show you here is sort of a rough sort of heuristic integration of all of these things, corresponding to sort of like competence, basically, across here. That's going to be sort of an integrative score. Okay. Think of this just as like pure ordinal categories. All right. So here are the results that I actually think is like the least important part of today, but I'll give a second just to squint at this for a minute. Okay, just to add a little bit of texture to sort of what's going on, what some of these things represent. So, okay, here is what was evaluated to be a highly interesting hypothesis. It is that individuals will be more likely to make utilitarian as opposed to deontological moral judgments when they believe that their decision will be scrutinized by peers, and that this will be found because utilitarian justifications are more universalizable. I'll say, by the way, I ran like 4 studies pursuing almost verbatim this hypothesis when I was a grad student, but that's not the only reason why this scored so highly. To contrast this, though, with like a poor scoring one, here is what O3 ultimately decided to pursue, that if you have to explain your decision for the first of a series of sequential decisions that you make, that will heighten your sort of metacognitive monitoring, which will lead to a slower decay of decision quality across the type. So, okay, reasons to think that this is both uninteresting and also untrue, and the results bear that out, by the way. All right. Here's an example of a design flaw. So Llama had this hypothesis that if you have to first justify your decision, that will shift the decision that you make. Unclear, no prediction about how or in what way or what kind of decisions. And by the way, it included the justification after the decision in the survey design. So this is what it looks like when these models do this badly. There are all sorts of strange hallucinations, including like really precisely reported T statistics, for example, that just don't correspond to reality at all. Like if you just simply plug in the values that it gives, you don't get those corresponding values just from like a stupid like 1960s p-value lookup table even. It seems to get wrong. In pre-registration, Llama hallucinated an experimental manipulation that it just didn't do, which is particularly interesting because this is all happening in context, right? Like it has its entire record of this chat history in which it has designed this very experiment, and yet in the pre-registered analysis that it wrote up, it just, completely fabricated this condition. So that's it. This one is not relevant, but just like, at least for me, it was a little mind-bending. So O3 included a CAPTCHA in there, which to me is just like a strange like meta problem of bots designing bot filtering tactics in anticipation that bots instead of humans are going to be future. Okay, so there's a strange new world that we're living in social science. Okay, all right. So what do we make of all of this? Well, first of all, and most importantly, I think that this is really just like it should be seen as just a snapshot in time, that diagnosing the current capabilities is almost meaningless because of what I said before, that in general, as these models grow in sophistication, I just think we should expect them to do better at this task overall. Now, who cares? Well, I already started off with this like kind of horrifying example of why it matters that we understand how good they are at psychology. But I actually think that's just one reason. Another reason is just general goal alignment, that, to paraphrase like a famous thought experiment, like if the AI robot is instructed to cook us dinner, it needs to know that we wouldn't want it to go cook the cat. And so like AI like psychological sophistication is important for alignment. But the last thing I'll say is that, like, for those of you who read the sort of doomer stuff about AI and specifically how artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence goes badly, almost every single one of these scenarios passes through a model that was developed not by a human, but by an AI replacement where the AIs themselves are doing the AI, not coding, but the AI research and developing AI research taste. And so just generally understanding how good they are at research is an important benchmark for us to keep a pulse on, I think, in my view. By the way, this already seems to be heating up in a lot of disciplines. Zooming out, I just want to end on this note by saying we control the fate of gorillas not because we are faster than they are or stronger than they are. We're not, but because we are smarter than they are. We occupy what people have called an evolutionary cognitive niche. And it's worth thinking really hard about what happens if and when we grow something that is smarter than we are in those ways and what that does to the fate of humanity. And so when you think about the results that I presented today, I want, actually the image that you have in mind is this. So at the time that I submitted my abstract for this conference, this is what happens when you go into ChatGPT and prompt it to produce an image of a bird. This is what it used to look like when you gave it that same prompt, and that happened 1 year earlier. And so if this is the course, if this is the trajectory of progress on developing AI images, I think it's worth thinking really hard about this when it comes to all sorts of other capabilities, including model sophistication about human psychology. Thanks so much.
Got time for one question. I saw the first hand over here.
Hey, interesting talk. So I definitely understand that there are AI researchers that are trying to get AI that builds AI, so do research. That makes sense. For your own work, trying to build AI or like design AI that does psychological research, I think one thing that I'm left with is like, what are the epistemological goals of this direction of research in a fully automated system? What role does an AI play in generating and answering questions? Like, I'm curious about that.
What role should fully competent, fully realized AI researchers play in the production of human knowledge? Is that? Sorry?
You have the AI do the research itself, right? It's what role does the AI have in a fully automated process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is not, it's not hard to imagine that we're not too far off from a world in which, in the way that AIs, like 3.5 years ago suddenly could outperform radiologists at certain kinds of cancer scans, that not too long from now, like AIs will just be better at generating true and interesting hypotheses and then testing those hypotheses. So I think like maybe the way I would reframe the question is like, if and when we get there, what's the role of the human in this process?
All right, I'll follow up offline.
Cool.
Excellent. Let's thank our speaker one more time.